Full name?
I can say Richard and Rita.
Richard and Rita.
And Richard, where were you born? Where are you from?
I was born in Clayton, New Mexico in 1942.
And did you grow up in town?
Yes, until I was 15 and moved to Albuquerque.
Why did you move to Albuquerque?
I had to get out of Dodge.
Did you move with your
The
family?
parents, yeah. Parents moved here. The whole family moved here.
What was the reason they moved?
Probably work. Not enough work in Clayton back then, in the 50s. My sister moved here, so my mother had to follow her.
What work did they do in Clayton before they moved?
My father was a bartender all his life. He managed all the bars and after he got out of the war in Clayton until he left in 57.
And what was the bar in Clayton where he was a bartender?
Oh my God, there was about 10 of them.
In Clayton?
Mm-hmm. No, Clayton was jamming in the 50s. There was about 8,000 people there.
And is that how Uncle Tony got work as a musician?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What kind of gigs did he do?
Oh, just the only thing there was just playing in weddings and anniversaries and parties and just out on the street.
Are you the one that told me he played with Bob Wills' band?
Yeah, he did. Off and on. I don't know for how long.
Because Bob Wills was out of
Guyman,
Guyman.
I think.
Oh, okay. So would Uncle Tony tour around with them?
As far as I know, he did. Not for long. He played the banjo. And that's all I ever heard him play was the banjo. And he used to have a Model A that I remember. And lived with my Tia Lucia, as far as I can remember.
In the back of her house?
In the same house. Her house was only, it had for one front room, kitchen, and one bedroom. And then they added on where there was another smaller room where he stayed, and then another room behind him where the bathroom was. That was the extent of the house.
And was that was the original house, or because that was the original house, and then Emma built the house next door?
Right. That was the original house that my grandma lived in. They all lived there when she came from the ranch.
Yes, and I found the record Juan Andreas bought that whole block in 1910 or 1912.
Yes. Emma built her house right next door to her, and her house is still standing, and she knocked down Tia's house. I don't remember what year it was.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't exist anymore.
It was closer to the main road?
It was right
on the other side.
Right. They were both facing south. Mm-hmm. So that wouldn't be are you talking about the highway? Mm-hmm. No. This was the side street.
Oh, okay.
By the side of the church.
Mm-hmm. So what were the circumstances that you heard of why they had to move off the ranch into the town? Tell me that story.
As far as I know, my uncle Emilio was a gambler, and he started gambling, And of course, he got worse after my grandfather died, and he gambled the ranch away. He gambled until somebody, I don't know who, he lost it in a gamble. So that's when my grandma had to move to Clayton to live with Tia Lucia, because Grandpa was already dead. Mm-hmm. They had to leave the ranch. That's about all I know about that part.
So when he died in his probate, all the assets were divided, half to Emilio, half to Juan Andres' wife, and the remaining 7 children had the other half. So I wonder how he was able to, he didn't own all of it outright. He only owned half of it. But I wonder, someone suggested to us that maybe he forged her.
Well, he apparently got a hold of the deed, and might have forged something. Anyway, he lost it.
Because I think maybe your grandmother didn't maybe read or write, which seems wild to me because her husband was such a literate, educated man, but those were the times.
Those were the times, I think. But, I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating what could have happened. I mean, I do know back then that when you had children, most of the stuff went to the older son took over. Mm-hmm. That was their custom, regardless what he did or who he was or whatever. So I'm assuming he had, and my grandma just went along with anything, according to what I've heard, that he was in charge and lost it.
So what was their life like when they lived on the ranch before they lost it all? I think Louisa went to boarding school, for one. And I heard that they had maids.
The ranch? Mm-hmm. I never heard that. Because, I don't know. When I went to the ranch the first time in 1950,
Were your grandparents alive when you went?
No, your mother, you guys lived in Colorado Springs. You were there. I have a picture of us that when you guys came to Clayton, of us, me and you and Anthony and Manuel, and Louise wasn't with you then. Oh. That's when we went to the ranch. And that was like, I would say, 52 or 3, maybe.
About 10.
And you just went for a visit with your mothers?
Yeah, well, they took us to the ranch. I remember we were little kids. And whoever was there, whoever owned it at the time or whatever, let us run around. And we got, when we were small, we got a hold of some eggs and threw them at the horses. So then they asked us to leave. That part I remember very well.
Uncle Spike was telling us when we were in Colorado Springs that there's that railroad bridge they had to cross from where they lived on Shook's Run to where their mother worked, and that they used to throw eggs at there was a passenger train, and they would throw eggs up so that the eggs would go like into the cars or something like that. Anyways,
yeah.
We all have the same blood.
Yeah. So that was the first time. It must have been early 50s. Could have been even, 40. It was the year that I did my first Holy Communion. That picture would say the age. I must have been about 8.
So did they tell you that was? Did your mother remember what did she say life was like when they lived on the ranch?
Life was good when he lived on the ranch. They had a lot of cattle. He had a lot of animals. He had a tornado hit close to the ranch one
Ooh,
time.
wow.
That's where one of the houses or a building, whichever, and see, I don't remember what other. I remember seeing the little house that they have. I don't know what's there now. But there was a house, and then there was another building. I guess it was made out of adobe, because when the tornado winds hit that, one wall caved in and fell on my tia Lucia's.
Oh.
Fell on her. At that I always knew Tia Lucia walked with a limp, way over with a limp. She walked with a limp. And what happened to her was that she broke her hip, and they never fixed it. She lived like that.
Wow.
And that was from a tornado that struck either on the ranch or very close to the ranch. The winds blew the wall down. One wall.
Would they go to school in town or out there?
That I don't know.
And did they? So they had a house in town, which eventually
Yeah.
you lived in, or they lived in.
No,
But I
that would
wonder-
be Tia Lucia's house.
Well, before that, I think they had a house in town so that the kids could, like in the winter,
Oh.
you wouldn't be out on the ranch. You would come in.
I don't know. I don't know.
So what was the effect after they lost the ranch? What was the effect on? Because your mom was 10?
My mother was born in 1913.
So she was 10 when they lost the ranch.
Yeah. So she remembers coming to town and all of that, but I don't think she remembers much. I mean, she never told us rather much further back than that, other than living on the ranch and when the wall fell on Tia Lucia.
She did go back to the ranch and showed us pictures of the room where she was born.
Oh, which room was that?
I don't know. I have the picture, but
Was it
in the
upstairs or
house,
downstairs?
I don't know.
It wasn't a
I've never
two-story.
been there.
When did they add the 2-story?
I don't know. See, I saw the ranch when we went when we were little in the early 51. I never saw it again until 60 something, and then I never been back again.
When you went in when you were little, did it have the 2nd story?
No.
Oh,
No, it was a stone house.
interesting. So how did they have all those kids in that one little?
Must have been so small.
But that's what I'm saying with that other one.
That
I
was
went to
normal
Amora.
life.
It was the culture. Like
Yeah.
if you had
Yeah.
a bunch of kids, you wanted
Laid
they all
them over
slept
there and
together.
laid them everywhere.
And maybe some of the boys would go sleep in the bunk houses or whatever, and
Could be.
because they had ranch hands.
They did have another building, but it wasn't 2-story. That's that building that was. See, the main house was made out of stone, which was normal in that part of the country. I have other friends that they lived out there, and their houses were made out of stone, not very big. And I remember that one made out of stone, but there was another one that the wall caved in that wasn't stone. But I can't remember how big that was.
So if you go, we can show you pictures, but I just remembered that there is a window on the 2nd story, and it has J.A. Pacheco carved in the what's the stone that goes across?
The lentil.
Uh-huh.
Minute. That's what they typically.
So that's interesting.
But I've never been back. I haven't been back there for
And you can go see the gravestone. Did you go to the Juan Andres?
when I was little. Yeah.
So what was their life like when they moved to Clayton? Your grandmother had to take in sewing and
Everything. From what I understand, she did sewing and a lot of sewing. I guess that's how she made money or whatever. And of course, by then, mother got married and left, so that was one less in that little house. And Tia well, the only one living in that little house by then was Tia Lucia and my grandma and my mother.
And Tia Nash
Yeah, Tia Nash.
and Emma.
No.
It's in the census on.
She probably lived.
Oh,
with
she
us
lived-
because she got married.
She was
might,
little.
yeah, I guess so. She might have been
In I think it was the 1930 census. It's your grandma, Uncle Tony, Tia Lucia, Emma, and Tia Nash.
well, they all lived in
All
that
in that
little
house.
house, which was about big as a garage, 400 square feet maybe.
Wow. So your parents first moved. Didn't they move to Taos?
Yeah, we went to. My dad bought a bar in Taos, and in 1951, I think it was, and we went over there for a couple of years, and then he sold it, and he went up to Red River for the summer to run the resorts up there.
Oh.
And at that time, Red River was nothing but Texans
It's still nothing but Texans
and Okies.
and Okies.
And your father was in World War II.
Yeah, he was in World War
He
II.
was tank driver for General Patton.
Was he drafted
He was
Yes,
drafted.
out of Clayton?
yes. Before then, he was in National Guard, which was the cavalry. That picture up there, that room, I have him on the horse,
Oh yeah.
the whole thing. He was in the cavalry, and he was in Fort Bliss. That's when he was about 16 in that picture, and they drafted him when he was about 30, 34, 35, something like that.
Years old.
Uh-huh.
So after he was married and had kids.
Yes,
Oh
World
my
War
gosh.
II took anybody that could walk.
Well, I guess her father went and had 5 little ones, like under 5.
Yeah. No, the Second War, everybody. You had to be dying before they.
So so your mother must have been left in Clayton?
Left in Clayton.
With
I
kids?
remember we lived, and I was born, and of course she already had 3, so there would be 4 of us, and I remember us living in little houses. They had these tiny little houses. I saw pictures of. I don't remember this. Neighbor over there used to give me a bath in a little tub outside in the porch. And then I saw that picture, and there were tiny little houses, probably 1 room. I don't think they even had bathrooms.
At Fort Bliss?
No, in Clayton.
Oh, in Clayton?
Yeah, across the street from the church.
For military families?
No,
Or
there was
just
no
that's
such
just where
thing. No, during the war, the only thing they had in Clayton were German soldiers, prisoners.
there was a camp there?
Yeah,
Oh. I didn't know that. I knew there was one outside of Trinidad.
yeah, there was one in Clayton too.
Where was that?
I don't know.
Wow, I haven't heard that. Well, Bess Isaacs told me that there was a lake just outside of, or just part of, like if you went where the highway is now, if you're going towards Tex Line, there was like a lake there. And they cleared it to make the road. But that might have been before you were born.
Yeah, that was before 42. Well,
So the
far
houses
as
you
I
were
remember.
living in were just,
tiny little house, and then my dad went to the war, and so my aunt Luisa and my uncle Fred were living in Clayton too. He had about 10 children, right? And he was a Fuller Brush salesman.
and Watkins,
That's what
right?
Huh?
And Watkins?
In Clayton.
In Clayton.
I mean, wasn't he a Watson salesman as
Oh,
well?
I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I just remember him selling brushes. He did that for years and years. And they lived there, and then they moved to Albuquerque. So he had that house on Monroe, and he sold it to Mother for $225.
Wow.
And she had to make a payment. I think it was $1 a month. And my dad was getting paid like, I don't remember, she said like $20 a month or something like that. So she would get his allotment check, and we would live off of that. And when they had commodities and you couldn't find sugar and coffee and all that in the stores, you had to buy them with stamps because they were so scarce. And then and I hear a story about 1932, I think, when they had the Dust Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And we were living in Clayton, and I wasn't born, but my older brother was born then when that happened. And they went through that and a depression, still living in that little house until 1943, I guess. She bought that. They moved over here. My uncle and that moved here, and she bought that house. And then my dad came home from the war and fixed it all up, him and his friends. They remodeled it and everything. Had indoor plumbing. And the house is still standing.
Mm-hmm.
So, barely, but it's there.
Yeah, we just went by there, and if it's the one if we found the right one,
The porch light was
it wasn't
on?
looking great.
The roof was, I have pictures of it.
Mm-hmm.
The roof is peeling back, and it's
Yeah.
it's sort of pointed, the roof,
Mm-hmm.
and the porch light's on. They keep them on so that if they cut the power, they'll condemn them. As long as the porch light's on, they can't condemn them.
Oh.
So that whoever owns it keeps the porch. And the one next door to it, with can't remember what their name was. Their porch light's on. I noticed now that we went by there.
So then they moved to Taos.
1951, like I said, he bought the bar over there. Just me and Mother and him went. Dolores and Archie. Dolores got married.
Oh.
She stayed in the house.
Oh.
So we went and did that thing, and we went to Taos and Red River and I think when I lived in Taos, I went to see these guys in Colorado Springs one year. You were living there.
Did you take the bus?
No, I went with my aunt and uncle from here. They went to Taos and picked me up and took me with them. And I was about 10, something like that, 10 or 11. Went to Taos, and then from there we came back to Clayton after 2 or 3 years of running around. And my sister moved to Albuquerque. So she had just had a baby, the first kid. So Mother had to be with her. So we moved over here.
And they
So-
bought the boarding house
Bought the boarding house
on Arno.
on Arno.
And how did that work?
Well, they had it for, 50. Must have had it for 13, 15 years.
And was it like a boarding house?
It's had little apartments.
So people long-term renters.
Yeah. Monthly renters. Yeah, some of them were just 2 rooms. They were for single people mostly. The couple of them was one downstairs that a couple lived there. Archie and Tony lived there for a while. The rest of the rooms upstairs, I think, were just mostly single people. There must have been like 4 more apartments upstairs, one down in the basement.
Did you live there too?
Yeah, when the time when they bought that in 1958, 8, I moved to Cuba. I had just gotten out of the Army National Guard at the age of 16.
Wow.
I went in when I was 13.
Oh, wow.
So I spent 6 months in Fort Bliss, Texas, in training. Came back to Clayton and then stayed there. Had 3 years in, and then when I got out, I wasn't old enough to join. So I didn't join again. They asked me to, but I told them I wasn't old enough. So at that time, I had a cousin here that ran around with this other friend of his that owned a meat market. So one day I cleaned his yard here in Albuquerque, and he looked at me and he said, "You'd be a good meat cutter." So I started cutting meat at his shop, and that was in 1959, about the beginning of the year. At the end of the year, they made me a journeyman meat cutter, and at the end of the year, I leased my own market in Cuba, my own
Cuba?
business. I was 17.
Why Cuba?
They had just built a brand new store, and it had the post office was a brand new building next door. This man had owned the whole property, built all of that, and he had a pretty good sized grocery store. So he didn't have a meat cutter. He didn't have anybody to run the meat department. So I leased it for 4 years. And at that time, I was only 17. So I ran that for 4 years. It was like a death sentence. But I had to do it because I had to have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the age of about 21, I moved back, came back to Albuquerque. And I started managing grocery stores for Kimball Company. They were called Barber's Food Supermarkets. Started running stores for them. Went in, they sold the food away, and I went from there, and then they sold to Smith's, and they were going to get us out of the union. And a company from back east bought the whole chain, all the chain. So they were going to break the union. They told me about it ahead of time, so I left to California. I told them I was sick for a month, and they paid me for a month, and I left, never came back. And she got a transfer by the government. So that's how we ended up in California, and I went to work for Alpha Beta Markets in California and did the same type of job over there. I became a district manager. So that's spent my 35 years.
Back to the boarding house that your parents had
Mm-hmm.
on Arno. I looked at do you know what the Green Book is?
No.
It's during, before civil rights, when black people needed to travel the country and didn't know where to stay that was safe. There was the Green Book, was like a travel guide, tour book for black Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And the only places that were listed in Albuquerque that were safe for them to stay or eat were both on Arno. Like across the street from the place where your parents had, and then like a couple doors down. Do you remember, was the neighborhood like diverse, or?
That used to, well, I would say when we went there, when they bought that house, there was no black people living around there. They had already gone further south, up to Gibson. Gibson is the street that runs by the base all the way down to Broadway. That's me. They went to Broadway. That's where the black people went at that time were at. Now they're way up northeast up here. And now there's Mexican people there. So they have moved. But at that time before that, I don't know, maybe they were this way. I know more or less what houses you're talking about.
Oh.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of two-story homes. That's where they had all the old homes. That was a rich area at one time of Albuquerque too, because of the type of homes that were there. And I guess before that, it must have been the country club. It was a rich area. I don't remember. But when I came here, the city ended in San Mateo.
Yeah, well, we were just talking about that Cliffs Amusement Park.
Yeah.
I guess that used to be in the middle of nowhere, outskirts of
Yeah,
town.
from there to the east was all. They offered me to buy property at one time when I first started cutting meat. When the guys were training me, he said, "Why don't you?" Hell, I was only making $25 a week, and he said, "You should buy some acres out here." Well, they weren't selling for much, but I said, "What do I want that for?" But I remember them being just east of San Mateo.
Okay, Rita, do you want to go? You want to scoot the microphone
Yes.
a little closer to you?
I'm 80 years old, born in New Mexico, Des Moines, New Mexico. My parents had 7 children, lost 2. I was named after my oldest sister, who died at the age of 13 from heart problems. And at that time, there was not much they could do for heart. My parents lost most of their property, money, whatever they had, trying to save her life. But ultimately, she died at the age of 13. My younger brother died as an infant. And I had 2 older brothers that both went into the service. One made a career after 30 years. The other one got out after his 10 years. My oldest brother now is 93 years old, lives in California. My younger brother passed away 2 years ago. I have 2 older sisters, one that I lost a month after I lost my brother, and I have one living sister in Arizona. I grew up in Des Moines until I was 13. We had no radio, we had no TV. Our entertainment was just playing. I remember being the youngest of the family. My sister had a bicycle, I did not. So I would get up.
Your younger sister did?
My older sister. I'm the youngest. My older sister, which is 3 years older than I am, she had a bike, but I didn't. So I would get up early in the morning and take off on her bike and stay gone as long as I could so that I could ride the bike. But they always found me because we had a dog named Rover, and the dog always went where I went. So when they would find the dog, they knew where Rita was at. But we had no toys like they have today. My doll were paper dolls cut out from a catalog. I don't remember doing without, although, by then, of course, I had lost my sister, and my father worked for a man that owned a lumber yard in Des Moines. My mother did not work. But I say we were poor, but we were rich because they taught us how to be dependable. They taught us how to be...
To survive.
Survive, of course, but to be dependable, to be good to other people, to be happy with what we had. And we did okay. My father had family there, another brother that lived there, a sister that lived there. So we had a lot of cousins, and so we entertained ourselves that way. And then at the age of 13, we moved to Raton. My father worked there for a year where the railroad hurt himself, and my mother worked at the hospital. And by then it was just me and my sister that was 3 years older than me. The rest of my brother's sister had already married and left. And then we moved to Albuquerque. And when we first moved here, I was in junior high and we lived in Martineztown. And I remember the junior high I had to go to was like way on the other side of town. So I used to walk to school like about 17, 18 blocks every morning to school.
What is Martineztown?
It's in the area.
Barrio.
It was a barrio neighborhood. It's right now it's up on Edith area, off of Lomas. It's still called Martineztown. And
Was
so
there not a school in the neighborhood?
not the junior high. That's the one that I had to go to. Yes, yeah. And so then the following year we moved to the other side of town, which was on Smith Street, not too far from Arno. Well, not that close, but in that area. And by then I was in high school, and I had to go the opposite direction, 18 blocks to go to high school. I walked it because we didn't have automobile. And so I would walk to school. And then after school, I always used to like clothes and stuff, so I'd walk downtown and go to the different stores and try on clothes, which I could not afford to buy because it was just something that I always thought I would like to have. And then I graduated, and when I went to pick up my report card, my last card, the principal had left a note that he wanted to see me. And while I was going to high school, I was a straight A student. So instead of doing study hall, I would go work in the business office for the school. And so when the principal wanted to see me, he wanted to see me because they were hiring a bookkeeper for the credit union for the schools. And they asked each school, high school, to recommend somebody from their school. So he wanted to recommend me because he had seen what I had done, at the business office. And so I was recommended from Albuquerque High School. And by then, I guess we had like about 5, 6 different high schools in the city. And so he asked me, he said, "Would you have a job?" And I said no, but I purposely didn't want a job. I wanted to spend my summer. I wanted to have my summer free. So I hadn't even looked. And to make a long story short, because I had straight A's, I never applied for a scholarship. I could have gone to college, and I'm sure I could have gotten help, but I just didn't do it. So he recommended me, and so this was like on a Thursday or something. So the next day they called for me to come for interview. I went to interview on a Friday. By then they had interviewed others from the other schools, and by next week on Monday, I got called. I got selected for the job. So I started working right out of high school. I retired at the age of 56 with 38 years service between my government and aerospace. And so then my job became to travel. So we traveled all over the United States in an RV. We'd go camping. And then decided that we needed to go elsewhere. So we started traveling to other countries. And we've been to many countries.
31.
31 countries. I have, recently somebody asked me, of all the travels you did, what was your favorite? But we were at this one resort where this waiter was a Mayan. And he asked me one day, "Will you teach me?" He spoke Spanish, of course, Mayan, and English, because you had to speak English to work at the hotel. will you teach me some English? He says, I like to talk to the people, not just about the job, just about their families, and I can't do that, and I want to learn. So he would write it to me in Spanish. I'd translate it in English so he could learn how to do it. And he said, I'll teach you Mayan. So he started teaching me Mayan, but it's a very difficult language, and he'd make me repeat and repeat and repeat and say, no, no, no. I gave up. But I said to him, I find the Mayan history so interesting that I would love to spend a day with a Mayan family. But they don't do that. Just like the American Indians, you have to be invited into their home. You can't just go. So he did, he shared with me that, they don't do that in their culture, and I understand that, and of course I respected that. Well, about 3 days later, he came back and he says, were you serious? And I said, well, yes, that's why I was serious. He said, well, I asked my parents if they would accept you to come to their home, and they said yes. And I said, but how do I get there? And he said, I'll arrange it for you. I'll tell the taxi where to take you. Well, these people live in the jungle. They literally live in the jungle. And so we got to spend a day with them at their home. And they grow their own food. They have no furniture. They have hammocks. They have a shower out on the tree where they use with a bucket. The lady washes her clothes out of a tree thing that trunk that he made for her. Well, we expected to, I was planning on going to spend a couple of hours with them, but they did not want us to leave, and so we stayed literally most of the day. They have well water. They're trying to teach me how to do like blankets weaving, and so it was a very, very touching and very a wonderful experience that I'll never get to do again. At the time, the man was 48, and he was already old. And of course, they have a hard life. But he was a chicolero. And a chicolero is someone that...
He worked for
Wrigley's gum company. There's a tree that does the gum.
The gum. Climb a tree. He cuts
so he says, let me take you up and show you. And he goes up there, and of course by then he wasn't doing it anymore, but it looks like the
Elmer's glue.
Yeah, like glue. So he showed us how he used to do that, but he used to work for the Wrigley's gum company.
He made the chewing gum.
Yeah. So that was really interesting.
Wow.
It's a very interesting culture, yeah. And since then, like I say, we've traveled different places.
Here we are.
And here we are.
And it all started in Des Moines.
New
Where in
Mexico.
Des Moines did you live?
Well, it's hard to tell you exactly. Well, if you're familiar with Des Moines at all, you know the road that goes to the high school, to the school? Mm-hmm. We lived right off that road.
Oh, okay.
And the main street was where the grocery stores were, the post office, and then like maybe 2 blocks up is where we lived. And we lived in the corner house. It's no longer there.
Oh.
The house is no longer there. But it was in that area. And in that same block lived my uncle and my aunt, and so the family, a lot of the family lived there. And I remember loving it when it snowed, because we didn't have to go to school. We used to get lots of snow. We were snowed in. We literally snowed in. You couldn't go out. And
did you know Dolores Lujan?
I sure did.
We were just talking about her.
And Jake Lujan, yeah, they had a Jake's sheep barn. They used to have dances.
Oh.
And
would Uncle Tony play at that?
No.
I don't think so.
No, he wasn't playing by then.
Yeah. But we only had a dance once a month. It wasn't like we could go dancing anytime we wanted to. And they had. And then Dolores used to work at the post office. She was the postmaster at the post office.
And she came out here from New York on the orphan train.
That's what I heard.
And then she
yeah.
was adopted by our cousins.
Yes, that's what I heard. Yeah.
Did you know if
And-
she was cousins? That she
At
was
the time,
related, or
No.
They also had a big ranch. Yeah, in Des Moines.
And one last question for both of you: did in any of your families, were there any like healers or midwives or like any kind of folk medicine that was used, like herbal remedies if you got sick or something?
Yeah,
Just the stuff we used at home.
Yeah, I mean, but it wasn't. I mean, it's not like now like you get a cold and
Whiskey and honey.
yeah, whiskey, honey, and lemon. That's how you cured a cold.
Put it in a bottle.
I still do that today. I like that. Yeah, I don't remember. My first time remembering going to a doctor is it was actually an emergency. I had appendicitis, and then not long after that, I had tonsillitis. I was in the hospital in Raton, and as a matter of fact, they say that I almost died myself. That my nails were turning purple after that operation. I don't remember none of that, and but I was, I guess, 12, 13 when that happened.
Did Tia Aurora have a child that had appendicitis and
It's right over there.
The
and
picture.
died
Mm-hmm.
because
Our oldest brother.
That was her first marriage. He was from her first marriage.
and they couldn't get to services on time, or
I don't think there was anybody in Clayton that could take care of it.
it was in Clayton.
Mm-hmm. I was in Clayton.
I thought I heard maybe they got turned away
No.
or something, but
I don't think so. I mean, as far as I know, that's what they said. That it was, at that time it was like a heart attack or something. There was no remedy for stuff like that in a small town.
Thanks for listening to Luminaria. You can reach me at luminariapod@gmail.com. Our intro and outro music is of Varsoviana, performed by Nieves Anaya and his daughter Ernestina Anaya at Arroyo Hondo, New Mexico in 1940. It's part of the Juan Bautista Rael collection at the Library of Congress.